Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. First and foremost, we survived. We survived 2024. Let's celebrate that. But secondly, happy 2025. Happy New Year. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And this year we are going to be staying booked and busy. Literally, because there are so many exciting things happening in the book industry, in the publishing space, in the literary landscape in the next 365 days. 365, if you will. I went to the Brat Tour. I saw Charlie XCX in Manchester. It was a life-changing experience. Charlie XCX kind of dominated 2024, and I wanted to talk about the books that I think are going to dominate 2025. These are the Brat of books. So let's get into it. Well, I wanted to divide this video up into 3 parts, not just because I have 3 things to talk about. I have many things to yap about, trust me, but I think that the yapping can be divided into 3 kind of categories. Those categories are, number 1, books that I want to read in 2025. So my 2025 TBR. They look a little bit like this, and I compiled this list by watching an absurd number of other people's reading wrap-ups from 2024, but also by reading lots of different articles from experts and people in the industry who were talking about what the most exciting releases of 2024 were, and some of them I hadn't heard of, some of them I had but hadn't got round to. I read some great books in 2024, which I will have a video about very, very soon. My reading wrap-up, my best and worst books, my video on every book I read in 2024, reviewed in 1 sentence each. All of those videos are coming very, very, very soon. But I wanted to start the year by talking about these books, the books that I'm excited to read in 2025 to hopefully give you some inspiration. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to get them off my lap now that I've got them on here. Oh no, oh help. Well, that could have gone better. Then, the second thing that I wanted to speak about is the book-to-screen adaptations that we are going to be seeing in 2025. Some of them are in production right now. Some of them have been filmed. We're just waiting for a release date. There are so many amazing books that we are going to be seeing adapted into movies, and so I wanted to talk about them. And then finally, we are going to be talking about the most anticipated releases of 2025. So these are the books that are on my radar that are going to be released over the next year that I think you should keep an eye out for as well. That's the plan. I'll try and stick to it without going like too off piece, but these things happen. Okay, so these books I'm going to start with are books that I'm really excited to read this year. If you want to see my reviews as they happen, I post on Goodreads, on the Storygraph, on Threads, on Instagram, on TikTok, and then I'll be posting reviews over the course of the year as well. Basically, this is a big internet book club, and take this as your invitation to join. So the first book that I'm very, very excited about that I saw on so many people's favorite books of 2024 lists was Art Evenings by Alan Hollinghurst. Alan Hollinghurst wrote the book Line of Beauty and has written this incredible Bildungsroman about a guy who is half Burmese, half English, growing up, coming of age, coming out. And as a kid, he kind of grew up alongside this boy who turned into a pro-Brexit politician. And so I think you kind of see how their lives develop. And I'm so interested by this idea of 2 people who had identical educations, because these people meet in school, people who are from the same town, you know, they have all the same sort of reference points, and yet in their lives, they can diverge so much. I love that kind of a character study, and also a book that takes us throughout someone's life. I know you kind of watch this person grow from the 1960s all the way up to kind of the present day. I know it ends in the pandemic. And listen, while I avoid pandemic books literally like the plague, occasionally I will make an exception in very extreme examples. I don't know, I feel, maybe you feel the same, but I feel so fatigued by the whole pandemic, the whole pandemi lovato, that I just don't really gravitate towards art about it. Like, I don't really want to consume more content about the pandemic. Like, we had to live through it, and it was hell, it was horror. So I do think that this apparently employs the pandemic as a background setting in a very unique and powerful way. That's what I've heard. That is Art Evenings by Alan Hollinghurst. Next, we have this book. This is called The Coin. It's by Yasmin Zaher. This is a book about a wealthy Palestinian woman who moves to New York City. She's very stylish, but the kind of ideal life that she wants just feels slightly out of reach. And so when she befriends a homeless swindler, they set up a scheme together to resell Birkin bags. Her childhood memories converge with her material and existential statelessness, and the narrator unravels spectacularly. It's about sexuality, it's about her principles coming into question, and it's also about how she is trying to put down roots in a new city where she is working at a school for underprivileged boys. So lots going on in quite a slim novel, but it's described as a filthy, elegant book. And I just thought that sounded incredible. Next, we have this book. This is The 3 Lives of Kate Kay. And I actually discovered this book through my subscription to Book of the Month, who have very kindly sponsored today's video. You know how much I love Book of the Month. I think it's such an incredible idea and service. Basically, Book of the Month is a monthly book subscription service where a team of experts read hundreds of books and then pick their favorites, and you can choose each month which one of those books you would like to read, and then it is sent to you, a gorgeous hardback edition for an amazing price. It's been such a great way for me to discover new and emerging authors who I maybe wouldn't have discovered otherwise. I didn't know about this author or this book until I was looking at this month's choices. And this one is like a new kind of Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It's one for people who love a bit of gossip and hearing about someone's life from lots of different perspectives. And that for me is the beauty of Book of the Month, that you get to spend less time researching and more time actually reading amazing fiction. Because it's January and we all deserve a little treat in January, Book of the Month have been very, very kind and offered an amazing discount for you guys. You can get your first Book of the Month box for just $5 using the code NEWYOU, which is the most amazing price for books that have just been released in hardback in all their glory. I will leave the link down below, but it is always the most exciting day of the month when my blue box with my Book of the Month book arrives on my doorstep. So this month I chose The 3 Lives of Kate Kay. A propulsive and keenly observant novel, an anonymous best-selling author reveals the secrets from her past and why she's been on the run. Sign me up. That sounds amazing, and I'm so grateful to discover this through Book of the Month. Next, we have some tried and tested authors whose work I've previously loved, starting with Haruki Murakami. This is The City and its Uncertain Walls. When a young man's girlfriend mysteriously vanishes, he sets his heart on finding the imaginary city where her true self lives. His search will lead him to take a job in a remote library with mysteries of its own. This is a love story, a quest, an ode to books and to the libraries that house them. The City and its Uncertain Walls is a parable for these strange times. I talk a lot about Murakami's writing on this channel. I think he's such an interesting Japanese author. And I should add that this book is translated by Philip Gabriel, who always translates Murakami's books so expertly, so beautifully. These books feel like they have a sepia filter over them, you know, soundtracked by jazz. Murakami has such a unique tone of voice, which is just so buttery on the page to read. And I just think he is a master storyteller. And that's what I want to read. Another Japanese book by an author that I love is Mina's Matchbox by Yoko Ogawa. Yoko Ogawa wrote The Housekeeper and the Professor and The Memory Police, which are both beautiful, but also very different. So I'm intrigued by this. This is Mina's Matchbox. I remember Ruth Ozeki describing Yoko Ogawa as a quiet wizard, and I think that is such a great description. There's just something so magical in her prose, in the way that she constructs a sentence, and her books do have this kind of dreamlike quality. This is about a girl who leaves behind her mother in Tokyo and boards a train to a coastal town in Japan. She moves in with her aunt, and her aunt has this huge sprawling house, and so we kind of see it from the child's perspective, and I think it becomes an analysis of this family from the child's perspective as the family structure and everything that holds it up is on the verge of collapse. I would describe Yoko Ogawa as kind of unpretentious in the way that she writes, but there's something so elegant about it. And so here we are. Now, Dorothy Parker is someone whose poetry I love, but I've never read any of her prose. And this book is called Constant Reader. It's basically her columns from The New Yorker between 1927 and 1928. So she got a job as a book reviewer at The New Yorker. She was known for her wit. She was known as an arbiter of taste. In the year that she spent as a weekly reviewer under the byline Constant Reader, she created what is still the most entertaining book column ever written. And I thought that just sounded really fun, especially as someone who reviews books for a living as well. I thought, let's learn from the greatest to ever do it and hopefully learn a thing or two. We'll see. Now, if you won't take my word for it that Olga Tokarczuk is an incredible writer, take the word of the Nobel Prize, because she won the Nobel Prize for Literature and has written incredible books like Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. Such a good title. I saw that Pedro Pascal has been reading that on Instagram. So again, if you won't take my word for it, take Pedro Pascal's word for it. And this is her newest book. It's called The Impusium, and this is described as a health resort horror story. So it's kind of giving me like The White Lotus if it was even darker. This book probes the horrors that lie beneath our most hallowed ideas. It's set in September 1913, and a young Polish person suffering from tuberculosis arrives at a guest house for gentlemen in a small village. Every evening, all of the residents gather together to take a hallucinogenic local liquor, and this leads to debates about the great issues of the day. So, for example, they talk about monarchy or democracy. Do devils exist? Are women born inferior? What is superior, war or peace? So I think this is going to have some fascinating conversations, but also be really wacky. And that's what I want. Now, this book is an absolute beast. This is called Praiseworthy. It is an Australian novel, which I know a lot of people were very surprised not to see get a Booker Prize nomination last year, so that immediately piqued my interest. It's set in a small Aboriginal town dominated by a haze cloud, which heralds both ecological disaster and a gathering of the ancestors. Told with the richness of language and scale of imagery for which Alexis Wright has become renowned, Praiseworthy is a marvel of explosive sentences, a shock to allegory, an outraged cry against oppression, and a biting satire for the end of days. I mean, hello? Hello? Are you hearing this? I also really appreciate how this publisher and other stories are so confident in the words in this book that they are like, you don't even need to judge this book by its cover. We're just going to give you the first sentence on the cover and you can judge it by that. That's kind of big dick energy in a publishing kind of way. I like that they kind of say, we're going to let the writing do the talking, and here it is. And so, of course, here it is on my TBR in my book stack. This is called Scaffolding. It's by Lauren Elkin. It's set in Paris, where I used to live, and I can confirm there is always a lot of scaffolding in Paris. But I do think there's something so special about reading a book set in a place that you have an intimate familiarity with. This book is the story of two different couples who live in the same Parisian apartment 50 years apart. And the only thing that is consistent is that there is scaffolding outside the apartment window. And this is such a great concept. I always, when you discover a concept that you really love, you just always hope that they do it justice. And I've heard that Lauren Elkin absolutely does. I've been very intrigued for a lot of years about the concept of temporary space, about places that we rent, When I lived in Paris, I was renting these amazing old buildings in iconic places, and it's crazy to think, what I went through when I lived in those rooms, but also what other people have gone through while living in those same rooms that we don't even realize. Someone could have been born in that room. Someone could have died in that room. Someone has fallen in love in that room. Someone's been broken up with and had a broken heart in that room. And I am incredibly excited about a book that considers all of those things. It's described as atmospheric and evocative, the prose elegant and poised. This book by Garth Greenwell is called Small Rain. Garth Greenwell's sensibility is rich and generous. The narrator's memories are haunting, and his experiences of both illness and love are deeply affecting. You are in the room with him. This is a true achievement written with engaged humanity and a great command of style. It was touted as a kind of unexpected love story about a poet, and you know how I feel about books about poets. They are always so lyrical, and I am one for no plot, just vibes. I'm so happy if the book is just beautifully written, if the sentences are excellently, meticulously crafted and help me to think about the world and life in a slightly different way, and poets always do that. So this is a book about a poet who suddenly has this crippling illness and his life is turned completely inside out by this wrenching pain. It's a novel set at the furthest edges of human experience, a place where the forces that give life value, poetry, music, memory, care, are thrown into sharp relief. It encompasses a radiant vision of human life, our shared vulnerability, the limits and possibilities of sympathy, and the ideal of art, as well as the fragile dream of America. I want poetic writing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and every snack in between, every food group imaginable. Replace them with poetic writing. I will be very happy. This is a book that also got a lot of buzz last year. It's called Colored Television. It's by Danzy Senna. It's about a writer in LA who is house sitting in this absolutely huge, glamorous, beautiful home. And this coincides with a sabbatical year that she is taking to write her second novel. And she's really hoping this is going to be her chance at success. And I don't think it quite works out. And so as an alternative, she turns to Hollywood to try her writing there and see if she can kind of make a name for herself. And I thought that sounded like a really fun concept. This is a book that was recommended by Dua Lipa in her book club with Service 95. And out of all of the celebrity book clubs that are out there, I really trust Dua. I know that she reads really diversely and from a range of people all around the world, and she's really interested in storytelling, and so am I. And so anything that she recommends that I haven't yet read, I'm desperate to get my hands on. So that's how I picked up Bad Habit. It's about a young trans woman growing up in a working class suburb that has no place for her. She discovers community and kinship in downtown Madrid amid a dazzling party scene animated by charming junkies, glamorous pop divas, and fallen angels. It's about a woman facing antagonism in every step that she takes in that city. And I've heard this book is kind of full of rage, but also beauty. And that sounds incredibly special. 2 more books that I'm excited to read this year. So firstly, we have Someone Like Us, which is by Dina Mengestu, which asks the question, how well do we truly know the people that we love? I've heard it's about an unexpected journey across America. It's about race and class, but also immigration and the concept of exile. So that is Someone Like Us. And then finally, of the books that I'm excited to read in 2025, we have The Book of Love. This is by Kelly Link, the long-awaited novel from best-selling author and Pulitzer Prize finalist Kelly Link. This is pure enchantment, a tale of love, death, magic, and teenagers being teenagers, rich with fairy strangeness and told in sentences like jewels strung on a chain. Come on. I've heard that the people and the places described in this book just feel so true to life that it is completely captivating and enchanting. And that rounds out my 2025 TBR. So I am hoping to get to the end of this year with all of these books having been read. I hope to be seeing a lot of these on my end of 2025 reading wrap up, best books of the year list, hopefully. If I don't read all of these books, you have permission to take me outside and shoot me like a sick dog. Well, okay, maybe not that serious, but those are the books that are most piquing my interest. And so I feel like that is a pretty doable list. I feel like I can read those. And you have permission to hold me accountable to that. Maybe not by actually shooting me. Please don't do that. Just like shoot me in the comment section. You know what I'm saying? I don't really know what I'm saying. Let's move on. Movies. Book to screen adaptations that I am very excited about. Well, firstly, of course, we have Wicked Part 2, based on the book Wicked by Gregory Maguire. I'll be honest, I just love a spectacle. I love a film that is ostentatious in its production and its scope, in the way that it brings a huge cast together to create something that is just fun and dazzling and wild and just takes you on a kind of cinematic odyssey and all of that jazz. Speaking of the Odyssey, we also have Christopher Nolan adapting Homer's Odyssey for the big screen. I don't know if this will come out in 2025 because I think they're filming it right now, but it stars Tom Holland and Zendaya. I am so jealous of the kids growing up who are going to have this movie to watch and be their introduction to Greek mythology. It's meant to be one of Christopher Nolan's most ambitious projects yet, and I am sad. I'm already lining up for my cinema ticket and the film hasn't even been made yet. And another film that I'm very, very excited to see, and I'm thrilled to be seeing given another adaptation, is Frankenstein. Frankenstein is being directed by Guillermo del Toro, based on Mary Shelley's groundbreaking novel from 1818. And that's the power of literature, right? That we are still so in the palm of Mary Shelley's hand 2 centuries later. Originally, Andrew Garfield was supposed to be playing Frankenstein's monster, but he has been replaced by Jacob Elordi, which I think is great casting. On both counts, they would have been 2 very different movies, I think, with Andrew Garfield or Jacob Elordi at the helm. And then Dr. Frankenstein himself is Oscar Isaac, and the movie also will star Mia Goth. So a stellar cast who I hope will be bringing this to life in new and innovative ways. Please, someone leak me that file. I won't tell anyone, I promise. If you just send me a little WeTransfer, send me a little Dropbox link, because I need to watch it now. We also have Clara and the Sun by Ishiguro being adapted for the screen. Listen, just inject that straight into my bloodstream. I don't even need to watch it, just inject it. I need that to be inside my veins. It's directed by Taika Waititi. It's starring Jenna Ortega and Amy Adams. I love that book, and I think it has really interesting cubist elements to it, which brought to the screen, I think will give people a new appreciation of the novel and how intricate it is. So if you want to get ahead of the curve, I'm just saying, now would be a good time to read Clara and the Sun if you haven't yet. And a literary titan in the romance genre is Emily Henry. And I think we're going to be seeing all of her books adapted for the screen, but the first of which is People We Meet on Vacation. This is an upcoming American film adaptation of the same name, which is directed by Brett Haley and stars Emily Bader and Tom Blythe. I am still keeping my fingers crossed and holding out hope for an Io Adebri and Paul Mescal crossover Emily Henry movie. Hopefully we get that at some point. I'm so intrigued to see which actors will be bringing to life Emily Henry's characters, and those are the book to screen adaptations I am looking forward to. Now, chapter 3. of this video. New releases coming out in 2025 that I am eagerly anticipating, one of which is an Emily Henry book. I guess we can start there. Emily Henry is an author who has just mastered the blueprint for a good romance. I think that she is just getting better and better with each book that she releases. And this year she is blessing us with Great Big Beautiful World. I don't even want to know too much about what happens in this book, what the plot is set to be, because I just know that I'm going to buy it, I know I'm going to read it, and I know that I will probably love it. Another author I really love is Fredrik Backman. He has a book coming out this year called My Friends. He is a Swedish author who just gets comedy in books so right. And I think that's hard to do. I think it's actually a very difficult thing to make you laugh when you're reading a book. But Fredrik Backman just has this real wit and empathy where there are no villains in his books, really. All of the characters, even if they're flawed, you learn to love. And I think that that's very refreshing to believe that humans just have a natural propensity towards goodness, that fundamentally people are good, not evil, and that you just have to understand why they act in the ways that they do. But he does it in a way that doesn't take itself too seriously. These are such fun page-turning books, so I can't wait to read My Friends. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who you may remember from books like Americana, The Purple Hibiscus, Half of a Yellow Sun. So many bangers, like banger after banger, all hits, no misses. Not to mention non-fiction works like We Should All Be Feminists. And now a book that is described as being 10 years in the making. This is called Dream Count. It's a story of 4 women and their loves, their longings, and their desires. A book coming out this month is The Wickedest by Caleb Femi, which apparently takes you inside a kind of iconic London house party in South London, showing you the lives of all the different partygoers. I love media about parties, but also that moment when like it's time to go home, but you're still there. The party should have ended, but you're still going. It's about the ways that one can fall into the embrace of sound and the joys of language all at once. Next, fresh off the back of winning the Nobel Prize for Literature, we have Han Kang. Han Kang is a rare example of a writer where I've read every single one of her works that have been translated into English so far. And it's really exciting to be following an author in real time, like not be playing catch up, but to be reading each book as she feeds it to us. I'm like a little baby bird with an open mouth, just like, give me anything you've got. So this book is called We Do Not Part, where a solitary woman travels to Jeju Island in Korea to rescue a pet bird during a snowstorm. And on this little adventure and escapade, she finds herself face to face with a violent part of Korea's history, which is a kind of nearly erased chapter in Korea's political history. And Han Kang is so brilliant at writing really personal, microscopic character studies, but also politically charged stories. And so this is kind of bringing her two superpowers together. And I simply can't wait. If she told me to bark, I would bark. Next, we have Stag Dance by Tori Peters. Now, I read Detransition Baby by Tori Peters, and I thought it was one of the most brilliant discussions of being trans, because Tori Peters is writing from a trans perspective, and the way that she writes is filled with so much nuance. Like, it doesn't bother with all of these stupid Daily Mail headline dramas about trans issues, which is just full of shaming and fear-mongering and scapegoating, and they're just ridiculous. Tori Peters' writing is the perfect antidote to that, because it is filled with compassion and empathy and intellectual discussions and debates which are actually stimulating and thought-provoking. Stag Dance is set during an apocalyptic pandemic where people who catch this illness lose the ability to naturally create hormones. Now, 2025 is going to be a landmark event because Ocean Vuong is back with his second novel, Emperor of Gladness, author of On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, as well as the poetry collections Time is a Mother and Night Sky with Exit Wounds. Ocean Vuong, even the way he speaks is just pure poetry. I am absolutely in awe of him. Trust me, just search up any interview with him, any podcast that he's ever done. He is one of the most mesmerizing, exciting authors that we have writing books today, and so I am buzzing. Emperor of Gladness is about a suicidal 19-year-old Vietnamese man who, through looking after a widow with dementia and through working at a restaurant in rural Connecticut, kind of ends up finding a chosen family. R.F. Kuang is releasing a new book this year as well. This is called Catabasis, which I think Catabasis in ancient Greek meant kind of a journey to the underworld. And so this book is about two academic rivals from Cambridge who have to travel to hell in order to rescue the soul of their academic advisor. So it kind of brings together dark academia, mythology, a kind of epic thriller story, and an adventure, and invoking mythological characters. I'm very excited about this one. This is a title I think is absolutely amazing. One day, everyone will be against this. This is a non-fiction book reckoning with what it means to be American right now. After 20 years of working as a journalist covering the war on terror, the Black Lives Matter protests, and the growing death toll in Gaza, the Egyptian-Canadian writer who now lives in the US has been disheartened by the lack of compassion and empathy he's seen from his adopted country. With his new book, he tries to make sense of how the promise of the American dream has become such a nightmare. That sounds like the perfect book for our current times and something I am desperate to read. And often these books just help you to articulate the thoughts that you are feeling as well and your frustrations with the world. And so the fact that an award-winning novelist and journalist, Omar El-Akkad, has written this down and helps you to contextualize everything, I think is going to be so valuable. Thank you, Omar. I'm looking forward to reading your book. This one is just for the pure nerd inside me. This is Jane Austen's Bookshelf. This is a book compiled by Rebecca Romney about the books that Jane Austen had in her home library. Like Jane Austen's version of this. That sounds amazing. And I'm so intrigued by what her reference points would have been. Next, absolutely committed to having the worst book covers imaginable is Taylor Jenkins Reid. What the hell is this, bestie? But the book is called Atmosphere. It's set in space. Whoever designs these book covers for Taylor Jenkins Reid, I just need to have a one-to-one chat. We need to go outside and fight this out. We need to work this out on the remix because we need some new covers that do justice to how beautifully Taylor Jenkins Reid writes. Taylor Jenkins Reid is really great at striking the balance between writing something that is entertaining and fast-paced, but also literary in its approach. And this book follows physics professor Joan Goodwin as she attempts to become one of the first women to join NASA's space shuttle. Amid her training, Joan finds herself falling for another recruit, and when a terrifying incident on the mission puts the lives of her colleagues, including her love, on the line, Joan must find a way to bring the crew home safely. Another title I absolutely love, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. That's just so beautiful. I feel emotional. I feel emotional just reading that. This is by V.E. Schwab, who brought to us The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And I liked her writing style. This is described as the toxic lesbian vampires are coming. Disappoint Me by Nicola Dinnan. Her book Bellies was a huge hit. This is an exploration of heteronormativity and the weight of expectation. Max is a wildly successful trans woman who walks on a firmly hoisted tightrope between corporate victory in her legal job and a creative expression in her side gig as a published poet. That is until she has a drunken accident and decides to tackle the impact of years of gender dysphoria and a disappointing love life head on. I think there's something refreshing about hearing that this is a trans story that is told from the perspective of someone who has had ostensible success, both in corporate spaces and in creative spaces, and then seeing her tackle the things that she still finds aren't fulfilling her. We also have the book Greatest of All Time, which tackles the taboo of sexuality in men's football. May You Have Delicious Meals was a Japanese bestseller, now translated into English, by Morgan Giles, and this takes on Japanese work culture. This next book is called Perfection, and it's kind of all about trying to curate that Instagram perfect, Pinterestable life. It's about millennial expats who are living in Berlin. They freelance in graphic design. On the surface, they seem to have absolutely everything, but this book unpacks the dissatisfaction they find when their activism isn't fulfilling them and their jobs aren't stimulating anymore, and their friends start to grow up and move on, and it's meant to be very witty and moving, and I can't wait to read it. Thirst Trap is a book about friendship, specifically about a set of women in their 20s. It grapples with the idea and asks the question, what happens when the cracks in your friendship become too big to manage? I love reading books about people in their 20s treacherously navigating life. Everyone is talking about this book. It is called Rejection. It's already out in the US, and I saw it in so many people's favorite books of 2024 lists, but it's not yet out in the UK. We get it in February, I think, but this is described as an electrifying novel in stories that follows a cast of intricately linked characters as rejection throws their lives and relationships into chaos. I've never really seen the concept of rejection explored in literature that much, so I thought this sounded great. I also like that it's told in interlinked short stories, because then I think we're going to get quite a broad and vast depiction of what rejection truly is and looks like and how it manifests in real life. And finally, another corker, another zinger of a book title. I Want to Go Home, but I'm Already There. This is kind of about how horror stories have always taken place in castles and manors and abandoned buildings. This horror takes place in a rented apartment. There's creepy neighbors, a sense of unease, and this book takes the tropes of classic Gothic tales and applies them to a thoroughly contemporary narrative on love in renter-unfriendly London. And as someone who is currently living in renter-unfriendly London, I thought this sounded perfect. So that is your ultimate guide to 2025 in books. Let me know if I missed anything, if there are any books that you are really excited to read this year in the comment section down below. I will be stalking. I will be reading through every single comment because I want to keep adding to this growing pile of books that I want to read, as well as, of course, tackling the books behind me that I have not yet got round to. I'm excited. I feel refreshed. I feel rejuvenated. I feel like I've kind of recalibrated my brain a little bit going into 2025. I started to set myself more relaxed reading goals. One of my big goals for this year is to read more African fiction, so I would really appreciate recommendations for that as well. In my quest to read books from all around the world, Africa is kind of my blind spot right now, and we need to fix that immediately. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all of the love in 2024. I know that I took a little bit of a break from doing book review content in 2024, kind of for the last 9 months. Being honest with you, the internet has just been a really tough place to navigate. I feel like I needed to give myself a bit of a rest, and I needed to give myself time to be excited by this again. And I am. I'm really taking 2025 as a fresh start, as an opportunity to listen more to myself and an opportunity to stop taking criticism from people I wouldn't take advice from, to make the content that I want to make. You know, last year was tough. I really started to put too much emphasis on the comments from a very small minority of people who are just haters, professional haters. But there comes a point where you have to stop making yourself smaller, making yourself so teeny tiny and quiet. There comes a point where you have to just embrace that you are loud. You have to be ambitious and imaginative and inventive, and you have to try new things. And it's like, if you are a key and you keep twisting that key and bending that key to fit other people's locks, eventually you and that key will be so misshapen that you can't even unlock your own full potential anymore. You can't unlock the thing that you were meant to unlock. That, I think, is kind of where I was at last year. That is where I got to a point where I didn't even recognize myself, and neither did the people around me. You know, people would say to me, "Do you realize you apologize before you do anything?" Just in day-to-day life, not even when I'm on camera anymore. Like, I would add a disclaimer before I did anything for the risk of being misunderstood. And then online, I stopped sharing my yearly wrap-ups because people said it was overconsumption to read as many books as I do, even though this is my full-time gig. I stopped posting about pop culture because people said it was cringe. I stopped posting my celebrity book club, which was my favorite series that I made on this channel. It's what made my YouTube account kind of blow up. I stopped posting those videos because people said there's more important things going on in the world. And yes, that's true, but I could use those videos to highlight those things, and I could talk about both. And that was what I think was powerful. I stopped making snappy, engaging, fast-paced reviews because people said it was anti-intellectual. But for me, it was what helped people to connect with literature. Maybe people who didn't consider themselves to be readers otherwise. It was a way for them to engage with this community and for me to create one. And I loved that. I even, you know, it's so stupid, but I even softened my accent because people kept calling me Tory, even though I have never voted Tory in my entire life, and I campaign against the Conservatives at any opportunity I get. But this is the thing. I started to dilute my personality because of little comments about the minutiae of the way that I act and behave and hold myself. I stopped sharing anything about my personal life because it became a discussion point. And, you know, it's so weird to see people discussing little elements of your life on the internet. And ultimately, I think I felt like a little dog who was rolling over onto its back, exposing its belly, exposing its softest, most vulnerable parts. At the end of the day, all that little dog is asking for is love. And if it gets loads of love, it gets loads of belly rubs, but then one person punches it right in its side, that little dog will flinch next time it feels vulnerable. And that's kind of how I feel like I ended up with my relationship with the internet. Like, guard up all the time, flinching constantly, feeling just genuinely afraid to share anything. And so you will have noticed I started to share a lot more things that didn't include any opinions whatsoever. It was like, I'm going to go out and buy these books and I don't have an opinion on them yet. I'm just excited to read them. I think they sound good, but I want to stress, this was such a small, tiny, tiny minority of the people who were engaging with my content. And mostly this community is so precious to me and is the reason I get up in the morning. And I don't want to lose that. It got to a point, where I had to really seriously consider whether I wanted to continue doing this. And that is heartbreaking for me because this is my passion. This has been my hobby. I was so lucky to turn it into a job, but ultimately this started as a labor of love and of something that I just woke up wanting to do. I used to race to finish my work at school, at university, at my job, because I was so desperate to create something and make a video, and be doing this. And I kind of lost that passion, that scrappiness, and that breaks my heart. So we have to stop that. We have to fix that. And that's what I've been working on over the last few months, is finding those healthy coping mechanisms and the things that help me to keep doing this. And thank God, thank God that I have now. So as of this moment, hopefully you will be seeing a bit of a change in things going back to how they were. I know some of you have said, we miss the old Jack, and I miss him too. I really do. So here he is. Here I am again. And it has to get back to that point. And so I'm making a conscious decision and a conscious choice for it to be that again. I love this community that we've built together, and I never ever want it to end or to feel disconnected from it. And so I hope this all makes sense. I hope I'm not just rambling. The way I'm doing that is by returning to the content that I love to make, that I hope you guys like to watch. I want to make what I want to make in the way that I want to make it. And, I don't want to say that anyone is above criticism, because they're not. It's so valid most of the time. And, I don't want to suggest that you shouldn't criticize anyone or question anything. I just think we have to do it with compassion and with empathy and with kindness at its core. And as I was saying about some of these books, with a genuine belief that people mean well and are trying their best. The reality is that you will get things wrong sometimes, and that's okay. The reality is also that you will be misunderstood, and that is the side of things that I am trying to get back to grips with. It is a fact that some people will try to blow out your flame, but that will not make theirs burn any brighter. Unfortunately, the only thing that really suffered here was my own creativity and my own passion for the things that I love to make so much. Putting yourself out there is not an easy thing to do. It's not something that the human brain is wired for. It's traumatic when you see so many people discussing something about you. It feels so invasive and intimate, but it's part of this, and this isn't something that I want to sacrifice and something that I want to let go of. It's something that I love. And so what I wanted to say with this rambly little moment at the end of this video is I feel very excited for 2025. I feel very refreshed and rejuvenated. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I feel recalibrated. I've taken some time away from posting the reviews, etc., and reminding myself why I love this community so much, which I do, and it means everything to me. And so we're back, baby. We're so back. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to make the content that I love to create. I hope that you enjoy it. So, hello again, I guess. I want to open myself back up and share my life, to share my personal life, to share my thoughts on things, my feelings about things, without fear, and just unashamedly, and confidently. So that's what we're going to do. I hope that's okay. Those are my thoughts that have been weighing pretty heavy on my brain, but that's okay. That's fine. And we're so back. I think this year has great things in store for all of us, and I am delighted that you're here on this journey with me. Thank you for being here. I'm so grateful to you. You can follow me across my social medias as well if you want to see my real-time updates as I work through my TBR. I love you all to the moon and back. Here's to 2025, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.